Jeremy, you're so passionate about this because, and this is a story you have told before, but you have your own experience that you draw from.
Yeah, well,
with
that's
this.
And then, it's funny because it'll bring a tear to my eye, but I don't draw it. So everybody kind of goes after, I was buried. I was 6 feet deep, and another guy was buried above me. Another group put a line over our heads, cut out a large avalanche, and it took out 4 of us that were parked below. We had a lot of fault in this accident too, and same with the people that put a line over our heads.
So can you pause 1 second?
Yeah.
So this was you told me this was 2003.
Correct.
So
yes.
20 years ago. So
hang on that. I'm going to correct that for once.
Okay.
For a long time, I ran 2003. And it's because I didn't ever want anyone to find out. Wow. Still, 20 years later. The guy that died. I didn't want them to have to relive the story. Mm-hmm. I always lied about the date.
I've been I corrected it a bunch of times lately because I'm like, hey, it actually happened this year, and called him out. I'm like, why do you say it? And he's just...
Yeah, so I've actually never said that publicly.
Wow.
It's actually 2004.
2004.
To protect the other parties involved.
Yeah. It's...
Oh, yeah. Crazy. I've told this story, God, I don't know how many times, but it's a different factor because he lost his life. I didn't.
Yeah.
You can tell the story. Save me the minute. I've told this story in front of thousands of people and get away with not crying.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you allow yourself to go back to the reasons, it hits you. Mm-hmm. So that's what it is.
If I can ask a question here, maybe give us an idea of, because we assume now, okay, there were probes, there were awesome beacons. We had airbags back because we have airbags now, right? But what type of equipment was that? Because there's some people who are probably watching this that, shoot, they may not have even been born in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? Or they're just so small they don't. So what was normal as far as equipment goes back then?
That's what kind of brings up the crying a little bit was it was old school stuff. Like to run that stuff, somebody had to spend 4 or 5 hours with you just to learn how to swedge it and swing it around. So if you had a multiple burial situation, it was a real problem to solve.
You're not looking at numbers. You're not looking at arrows for direction. You're listening to a noise. You put on a little headset, or it's got like an audio, and you're listening to the beep, and you're swedging it to make it louder as you move towards the victim. And you can't tell if there's 2 victims. Like you're just going in for one. You can if you're really trained. You're really good at what you're doing. But for a general person trained, like that situation, having 4 missing, plus unaccounted people in the other group, it's
like other people in
insane.
the group. So group 1, call it my group 1. We're parked underneath a face, right? And we're dealing with a broken down sled from jumping off a cliff. And then group 2 comes into the area. And group 2, 2 riders ahead. One guy goes shooting up the slope above us with his best friend in tow. Gets up, crests over the classic trigger point of the convexity, triggers a very large slab avalanche on my group below. And his friend's in tow. But he makes the climb, carries on. And then the avalanche comes down, swoops up, a bunch of us run. I wait for a camera guy, and he's yelling, take me, and he throws a camera in the bag, and I take him, and then we get hit. And the 2 guys I trust the most with my life, I watch right in front of me get gobbled up. And so I've relived the story, so all the images are very vivid for me. And so for me, I think I'm done, like the 2 guys I trust the most in my group are buried with me. And so you kind of wait, you do all that sort of stuff, but not to because we'd be here a long time, getting into the whole in-depth of it. But what happens next is, I think what's kind of interesting is one of our younger members of the group self-rescues and organizes, but group number 2, their friends are still driving around on the debris. And they don't know what's happened. They were kind of late into the bowl, And so they actually almost get in fistfights with them, trying to get them to turn their transceivers off so they could look for the missing signals. Yeah. So they manage that, and then they get me. And they get it. I was buried underneath another guy, and they get him, and then they get me, and then they go looking for nobody. They're like high-fiving. But the group that's sitting on the corner is like, hey, we're missing a guy still. And so they're like, oh, okay, well, that explains these weird blue skis.
The guys who do, there was another, they were buried as well.
Yeah, so the guy that crested triggered, but best friend in tow.
He's the one who's still missing.
Yeah. And, so he's missing, and so they start another search, and then they don't get a transceiver signal, and they're searching, and then the friends say, like, well, hey, he's not wearing one of those. And they say, okay, well, those are the blue skis, and these guys have a decent rec course back in the day. And so they pull out a probe line, and they get the guy at 30 centimeters deep type thing, laid out flat, right?
Wasn't wearing a transceiver?
Wasn't wearing. Left it in his, what makes me cry?
Left it in his hotel room.
With his baby.
With his wife and baby. But if he had been wearing it, they would have found him first, and Jeremy wouldn't be here. Which is...
what I usually don't say.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's
that's tough. No matter how you cut that up, that's a tough one to deal with for sure.
I've used the story to motivate for years, and I've never really allowed myself to go to this section of the story because it is because everybody knows everybody. So, yeah, I'll let you carry it.
So that's, I mean, you can tell that's where the passion's coming from now, because when something hits that deep,
yeah,
holy cow, you either run away from that or you fight as hard as you can to make sure that doesn't happen again.
He tried for a while to kind of just let it go and get back into it, get back into sledding. Life continues, but he's petrified of everything. It's a thing he thinks he has to get over. But fast forward a couple of years, and snowmobilers are dying. They're making the same mistakes that his group or group 2 made. And at this point, outside cultures are saying, we're the problem. We're the ones who aren't learning.
Yeah.
And he's thinking in his head, well, you haven't given us a course or an opportunity to learn our way. We're a different culture. We're not skiers.
Yeah, for me, like after that, I walk away like most men do, and I'm an oil and gas guy, pump it all in the back pocket and don't ever deal with it. And then oil and gas out here slows down in 08, and I got a house in Revelstoke. I ride all the time. And luckily, like I went and bought a snowmobile after the accident, went back out there because mountains were my life. And it was good. I was fine, but all my friends really have high risk tolerances, so to be back out there, I had to be hyper analytical about every risk. So it's what made me good at it. So I still wanted to go out there, push myself, have a lot of risk, but I had to become very structured on how to minimize that risk to make myself feel very comfortable. And so had a big snowboard background, had a lot of mountaineering accomplishments underneath my belt, and it took quite a few years to once again feel comfortable in the backcountry. And how I did that was, of course, through education and good group riding habits and understanding.
Trusting your partners.
Understanding the problem and how to manage it. So that's what made me good at this.